So the problem here, if I get it well, is of twofold. There's a primary issue and there's a secondary issue. The first thing I think we need to do is to apportion primary and secondary reality to the problems. The question sounds as though the primary problem is a unique ministry that she has not been able to step into. Well, I think that's misappropriated. The primary problem for a woman married who is called to ministry is the mastery of submission. That's the primary problem. The mastery of submission. When that, because, there's something I used to share, just when my wife began to talk about ministry, because in the beginning, I chose not to introduce her or impose her on the work. Maybe some people in the house felt slighted, because I believe that if God calls your husband, you have a part to play in his calling. As a matter of fact, you're not just marrying a man, you're marrying a mandate. Are you with me? That's what I believe. Yes. It's like you say that the church is the bride of Christ, and the church is not going to be impacted by the ministry of the Christ. That's a lie. And my ground is that the wife's model is the church, the husband's model is who? The Christ. So just as the church will be impacted upon by the ministry of the Christ, and the church will need to partake in the fulfillment of the ministry of the Christ, every woman also will. However, I don't think they should be bullied into it. So, things have to flow that way. But you see, I would say to my wife, your strongest position in anything God has told you to do is to be submitted to your husband. Once you lose out on submission, there are energies that you cannot come into. We can celebrate you, but when you get to the other side of eternity, you will see what you could have become that you could not become because you operated outside I don't want to use the word hierarchical, outside a divine structure. The head of Christ is God. The head of man is Christ. And the head of the woman is the man. There is a flow that comes down that line. And so the man's lack of interest may not be solely because he doesn't want to see the woman fulfill destiny. It may be because he has a problem with her submission. And no matter how hard she prays, I want to say this. If she does not fulfill that foundational requirement, God may not be interested in telling the man. It doesn't take too many days for a man to come into what God has called you to do. In one day, Joseph wanted to run away because of a baby, like a vision, like a dream, a mandate that Mary was carrying. Mary did not need to convince Joseph. Are you with me? The angel crept into Joseph's space to say, don't be afraid to take Mary. The explanations that Mary would have given to Joseph, the angel gave it. So it becomes very easy if the man is even a believer. His heart can be spoken to by the Lord. But the foundational thing that I think this woman needs is submission to the husband. And I can boldly say that for that she has a lot of models. So let's solve this foundational problem. Who do you look up to as a model? It's time to open up to a woman in whom you already see submission. Get instructions. Get some bit of discipline in that line. And then the woman can, on the strength of that foundation, now reach out for loftier things. You may find out, and this is a private opinion, even though I have the Spirit of God, that the Lord is so conscious of the shape, maybe so conscious of the shape of that home, that why this particular lady has not seen a model is that the Lord has veiled. Pioneering. There are few things we have been called to pioneer that have not been modeled. Even if the models are not exact models, there will be some look-alike model that God may not be giving the opportunity to view, because he knows if the lady sees that thing, there will be no reason to submit. And she's not covered. Let me say this to us ladies. If your husband is not a pastor, especially if he's a believer now, I'm speaking within that context, even if you feel that you're more anointed than him, he's your covering. And I want to recommend the book, Standing on the Rock, The Power of God's Covenants, written by Rebecca Brown. How many of us have read any of Rebecca Brown's books? Okay. These few? Okay. That's how we cut our teeth in warfare. Very high level spiritual warfare. Now, Rebecca Brown is the big anointed, Satan attacking, demon chasing, not in dreams, but in living manner. Walking as a doctor with Satanists and doing all of that, getting them out of the kingdom of darkness. She's married to Reverend Daniel Yoda, who came out of the Kabbalah religion. It's like an occultic Jewish kind of religion. She's the big person. As a matter of fact, it was through her hands that God in a church building orchestrated the deliverance of her husband from the demonic. And the story says that after the deliverance, the spirits that left the husband went through the roof, and all the pigeons on the roof were dead after the spirits left. The next time it rained, the church was leaking because there were too many holes. But that was the husband God gave to her. Maybe not as charismatic, maybe not as fluent in scriptures, maybe not as popular. I'm not sure you have heard Daniel Yoda before, but many days when she had to fight against physical attacks by occultists, as simple as somebody wearing a ring and trying to shake her, Daniel knew what an occultic ring looked like. And so there were many times they wanted to touch her, and Daniel ran and, twisted the person's hand, and she would be like, why are you being like that? Are you fine? You're being hurtful. And then he twists the hand and shows her that the back of the ring has a pin. If it enters into your body, you will fall dead now. They walk into the house and they find out that there's dew on their grounds, but there's no dew in any other person's hand. And she wants to run into the house, and he rushes into the house, packs their bags, puts in the car, and said, we can't sleep here tonight. She says, why? Yes, there's dew on the ground. And Daniel says it's not dew. It's an occultic ritual. It's called the whipping ground. So they take a white, a toilet roll, put a stick on it, and they rub it on the ground, and they see his blood coming out of the ground. It means a death curse has been passed on that house. If you sleep there, you won't wake up. So she's been deliverance. She's been a covering. I mean that you don't need to be more anointed than the woman before you can be a covering to her. Your position as by God in the home is a covering. And so you can minister everywhere and die there because you think you are more anointed than the man. So when God loves you, he puts a boundary. There's nothing my wife does in ministry that doesn't come to my table. And if she sends it and I miss it, maybe she writes it when I travel, she will need to be pointing fingers and pointing fingers on it. If I don't vet it, it doesn't happen. Because she may be more anointed than I am. I leave that to you. But I am her covering. And I wish that she be more anointed than I am. Not because I'm diminishing, but she should be better. Abi now. She's not even nodding her head. But that's the concept of a covering. So let her solve layer 1. And then that gives God the reason to bring her into another layer, which may involve a lot of peril